Welcome everybody to Japan. And David, you're looking very fetching in that kimono.
Well, thank you. My
You're
wardrobe
welcome,
is
my
very
good
extensive.
sir.
I've got a.
We were on the L's last time. Are we still on the L's this week?
We've got one final L to squeeze in, which has many different aspects actually, and this is L for lottery. So kind of some people might say in the sort of big context that property game is a bit of a lottery in that you can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow, and if certainty is your thing, then keep it in the bank earning 0.01%, and of that you can be certain, and I think we can also be certain that we'll earn a tad more than that in property, even in the areas that are very expensive now, and particularly in the areas that are not, where you could probably earn 100 times that with just a standard vanilla buy-to-let. But there are two other lottery aspects to things. Number one is the lottery buyer. I had a buyer once, or it wasn't strictly speaking a lottery, very nice lady, who used to go on game shows on the telly. And that is how she would win her deposit monies. And I thought she was making it up a bit until about 6 months after she had bought this property from me, using that deposit money, which she'd be able to show source of funds and everything, so that wouldn't be a problem. And I saw her on a show called Going for Gold, rather appropriate, and she won that as well. So that's one kind of rather strange phenomenon. And the second one is this: that again, this tends to happen in times of downturn. That subject to the lottery and gaming regulations, when there's a property that's kind of sticking, people have marketed their house on a sort of lottery type basis for a £10 ticket, where lots of tickets have been sent out, and provided the threshold is reached, the reserve price if you like, then it goes into a draw. Now to avoid it being a lottery as well, one little loophole that these people do, and the law changes all the time, so if ever you're thinking of doing this, do take proper legal advice about it. But one of the things that I saw is they turn it into a game of skill. So they ask you a question like, who is the Prime Minister? And provided you can answer that question correctly, and I suppose there must be some who fall at that hurdle, provided you can ask that question correctly, then your name goes into the hat, and they just draw out a winner from all those who got the question right. Or you could do that, I suppose, on a premium rate phone line, but you'd have to check the legality of all of it. But in the worst case, you might make more money than you would at auction. Who knows?
Yeah, I have seen people put their house up on a lottery basis, and the aim was basically to achieve the asking price or over, and it fell woefully short. They didn't get enough take-up. I think it's one of them, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true, and therefore people are a bit sceptical about parting with their hard-earned on your self-made lottery. So
yes,
it's one to watch out for, but it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Yes, I mean, I bought a £10 ticket once. I didn't win. So there we are, and I didn't get my £10 back. But anyway, never mind. It's just all the luck of the draw. I've never ever bought a lottery ticket for the lottery thing. But you see, that's the other thing. The perception would be, for £1 I can be a millionaire. So why should I put in a tenner and only get a house? So you're up against that, and you wouldn't have quite the same marketing as you would there. Well, you might get some of the newspapers interested, because that kind of thing is the Richard Branson balloon effect. If you're doing something kind of way out there, I think Branson, his ballooning didn't go into the commercials. It went into the actual program itself, which carries a lot more weight. And B, for every £1 that he spent on helium or whatever it is that goes in your balloons nowadays, not hydrogen, I don't think, he would get £6 worth of publicity back. So there are elements to this. We now
is that some sumo wrestlers over there? Can you see?
I certainly can see them. You can't. It's hard to miss a sumo wrestler, isn't it? Really. And
it is. Yeah.
Yes, they're bouncing around, shall we say?
Yeah, I was going to say that looks pretty awesome. That does.
Wouldn't
like to be on the wrong end of that one.
Oh no, never argue with a sumo wrestler. That's life lesson number 1.
Yeah. So that's the end of the L's. So after L's comes M's. Are we on the M's already? That's
We
almost
are.
halfway through the alphabet.
I think, I mean, A, B, C, D, E, yeah, we probably are about that halfway point. I'm not entirely sure. I can't really count up to 13 in my head, but yeah. Yeah.
M is number
So,
13, so that's halfway.
well, how did you do that so quickly? I mean, I'm only up to C, and I think that's 3, but that's about it. So the first M that we've got is something that you and I should do. Actually, it's mentoring, and it is a way of passing on expertise to people who are less experienced in the game. And there are a lot of not just tricks and tips and strategies, and there are a lot of things that it's better, if you like, to talk over with somebody who's been at it a bit longer. And I was very sort of risk averse for quite a lot of my property journey because I didn't really have anybody to run it past with. There wasn't an internet or anything like that. And so I just had to go with my sort of gut feelings. So if you can find somebody who'll take you under their wing and who will go through stuff at whatever level you need, and even people at sort of slightly higher levels need this kind of thing. It was, I think, was it Mark Zuckerberg was mentored? Was it by Larry Page or Steve Jobs? One or other of those two. So you know, or maybe both. And so you know, you're never too big to have someone who's even bigger give you a helping hand, in my view.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe, David, that number one, you were around before Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet. So that's phenomenal. And two, we haven't actually set up a mentoring opportunity. So if you're watching this and you need some mentoring, get in touch. Put some comments in the comments box below and we will get in touch with you.
Yeah.
Obviously, privately. Don't
Yes.
leave your phone number on the internet.
No. But I think that's something we should definitely do because between us, we've got 375 years of my expertise, and plus yours, so that's about 400.
And we've got 1 year of mine.
No. From mentoring, we moved to something that sounds like a convenience store in the United States, the Minimo. But of course, that's not what it is. It's a type of house in multiple occupancy that isn't, because to be an HMO, you need 3 or more people in 2 or more separate households. And with a Minimo, you have 2 people. So you buy a kind of 2 up, 2 down terraced house sort of thing, and you'd let it to, for example, I don't know, 2 gentlemen in their 50s who are friends, this kind of thing. And you're not going to get the conflict and the joie de vivre. You're not going to get the police around there at 3 o'clock in the morning with the sirens blazing, taking somebody out in handcuffs, and all the sorts of joys that you get in the fray with these other things. It's a nice, quiet, peaceful thing. But what you are going to get is you're going to get more rent than you would if you just let it to one of these gentlemen. So it does. I know quite a lot of people who do this and they follow this as a strategy, and you're not burdened with all the burdensome regulations that come with the joy of running HMOs either.
No, well, I was going to say Minimos can be very, very popular, and I think during the coronavirus pandemic, what I would say is those in Minimos are much better off in the larger sui generis HMOs, and you tend to find you get a better quality of property and more care and input from your landlord in terms of better facilities than what I call a mass market, pile them high, sell them cheap, squash them in type arrangement. So I was only talking to building control yesterday, and he was sort of shuddering at how he's seen so many HMOs, and he said the room sizes in some of them, they are really, really to the centimetre on the legislation. And he said people are squishing them in, and they're almost battery hen chickens the way they're packing them in, and they're not good places. And I think if you've built yourself a property that's as dense as my building control was indicating yesterday, you're likely to see a higher turnover of tenants. I know a very well-known interior designer in the property sector, and he has a very low turnover of tenants and puts that down to the design, the quality, and the fact that he runs mini mows. So it can help make your mows more profitable by having less in there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and he's a kind of designer as well. I know who we're talking. I think most people know who we're talking about, and his
Yeah.
stuff looks superb. It puts me to shame.
It does. Shall we name him? Because
We
I'm
could
sure
do.
he'll appreciate the credit. Mr.
Absolutely.
Julian Murrays, you do a phenomenal job. Keep up the good work, raising standards within the industry. Well done, you.
Excellent. Moving on. We have something that is probably illegal. So, but a lot of the things that were quite. I'm not talking about marijuana in the attic with funny lights on it. I'm talking about.
It's funny you
which
should
is
say marijuana in the attic. I actually saw a social media post today of somebody sharing how a friend's buy-to-let property had been turned into a marijuana farm. There was extractor ducts everywhere. They'd rewired the house. There was buckets of soil.
I mean,
I wouldn't like to do the clean-up job. And the way they'd knocked the structure around and ripped the electrics out, you're talking a 30 grand fix on that property. I mean, it really was ripped apart. So, yeah, we won't
Yes.
go on to marijuana farms. Not very
absolutely
legal.
no. I've come across those where they do. They'll knock a hole like that in the wall for the ventilation or something, whatever. They'll wire in their stuff. They'll bypass the meter and wire their stuff in and everything. Nightmare, but of course for a property investor, it offers you the chance to buy something at value because there are not many. There's not much competition. And another one I saw. It's fun to sort of go off on a tangent actually. These were some people who were doing I think some I was going to say transatlantic, but from one side of La Manche to the other, they had a sort of smuggling business where they were putting the bottles of whiskey or cigarettes or whatever into sandbags and running them backwards and forwards on builder lorries, not thinking that it would attract any attention at all to have a sort of Travis Perkins type lorry and other retailers available, but a privately branded builder lorry sort of going backwards and forwards under the tunnel with loads of bags of sand. They didn't think that would attract too much attention, which eventually it did. But then this house came to market, and unlike there was a movie called The Wooden Horse, wasn't there, where they're sort of tunneling, or The Great Escape, where they're sort of tunneling and distributing the soil. Well, these idiots put it up in the attic. So when the person who bought that had about 2 tons of soil resting on the plasterboard to remove before they could make that safe and habitable. But the things you see in property, huh?
I was going to say, as you were describing that, I was going, this sounds like The Great Escape. Why didn't they, as they're coming across on, I assume, the Channel Tunnel or the ferry, why didn't they just leave a trail of sand coming out the back of the vehicle, or like Hansel and Gretel throwing it out the back? I mean, oh, officer, there's a hole in my bag of sand. I'm sorry, I didn't realise it's leaked on the road. I'll get a brush and sweep it up for the last 200 miles.
Well, exactly. So that's another M in a sense, in the sense of mind-boggling, isn't it? The kinds of things that you come across in the property world. But no, the one on my mind was a mortgage host, which must be illegal now, whereby you take out the mortgage for somebody else because you'll tick the criteria. So we don't want to. I don't know whether it was ever legal. It probably wasn't necessary before, where the world and his dog could get a mortgage. But over the course of time, people have said to people, can you get a mortgage for me? And so I think our takeaway on that, we don't need to sort of go into the mechanics of it, but the takeaway is don't, isn't it really?
Yeah, I mean, never create mortgage fraud, because the word is there, fraud. Fraud is a criminal offence. And you don't want to go there.
Yeah, that prison food in San Quentin, it's not up to the sort of even 3-star, let me tell you, from my 20 years on the Rock, or was that Alcatraz? I get confused, as there's so many prisons, so little time to visit them. Now, staying with the word of mortgage, there are one or two. In fact, now, but the third one is one where some people should have gone to prison but didn't. But that's on the other side of the lending coin. But we'll do in the middle, mortgage overpayment. whereby which I'm a massive fan of mortgage overpayment, because I do think, as we were saying earlier about skating on thin ice, if you've got your 75% loan to value mortgage or whatever, and it's just about, and then always, you calculate the breaking point of that mortgage at what, well, not necessarily base rate, but at what actual amount interest rate you paying out, it suddenly dips into the negative, and so to avoid that, if you get the loan to value down a little bit, that helps. I think that's a terrific thing. Back in the day, the banks probably got quite annoyed with me, but I used to pay off my mortgages in about 5 years, but they'd always give me another one. They're quite forgiving. Nowadays, they might be less forgiving, so don't necessarily want to do that. But it's a good idea to reduce your exposure a bit by paying some of it back. At which point, of course, it disappears, but that's another story for another day. What happens to that money when you pay the mortgage back? That's beyond the scope of this talk. So let us assume that we've got an interest-only mortgage, for they are the best type to get, absolutely under all circumstances whatsoever. I'll defend that with my sword to the very last man, and I'll tell you for why. You get your interest, and don't tell any lenders this or whatever, because top secret. Lenders, if you're watching, switch off. So here's how it works. You get your interest-only mortgage, which is fixed at maybe £300 a month or something. And then after you've got it, you look up the T&Cs and you see what you're allowed to do in terms of overpayment. And for the first couple of years, there might be some kind of penalty, whatever. Now, you make that overpayment, whether it's in one payment per year or whether it's just by increasing the annual amount you pay. You imagine that in your head that you're on a repayment mortgage, so you start repaying that mortgage. How is that any different then? I can see the wheels going around. How is that any different from a repayment mortgage? Now, here's the difference. If either you want to put some money aside for a rainy day, or you envisage some buying opportunities coming along, maybe because of a pandemic or something like that, I couldn't comment. Or there's an emergency, good heavens, in your cash flow where all the tenants stop paying one day or something, you can ring up your lender, and you don't need to have any sort of negotiation or there's no begging involved, and you just go, hey, how you doing, dude? You know that mortgage? They go, yeah. And they say, well, I'm overpaying, and they go, yeah. And you go, well, from next month, I'd just like to pay the amount that it says that I have to pay. And they go, sure. So it makes for a much easier conversation with lenders if you overpay when you can. And it's a bit like there used to be these, I don't know if they have them anymore, mortgages that came with checkbooks where you could just sort of top them up and reduce them. Probably not for 20 years. I don't know. I never had one, but I remember them being touted as the very next thing back in 15 years ago or something like that. They probably don't have them anymore, but I'm not in a position to comment because I don't do that kind of thing. But it gives you flexibility, and I think flexibility is the key, and it doesn't upset anybody.
Absolutely. Well, mortgage overpayment, I did that on one of my mortgages, and in 7 years I managed to clear the mortgage. Now,
wow.
It is a little trick. As I've mentioned before, I used to work for a bank as an accountant, and as such I had access to their little calculators on their system to play with numbers, as did the other staff and accountants. And what we worked out was, number one, always pay your mortgage on the first of the month, because interest is calculated on the whole, not every mortgage product, but on the whole, on a daily basis. So if you pay on the 10th of the month, there's 10 days interest accrued on a higher balance than when you'd previously done it. Also, if you can afford to pay an extra £100 off a month, pay that £100 off a month, and you will get the compound effect of interest on £100 over 25 years. And the compounding, the timing of your payments, and the overpayments all lead to paying off a mortgage very, very, very fast. And it's a great way of doing it. Highly commend it. And there are videos out there on YouTube. We'll have to actually put one out on that topic ourselves, and I'll stand there as the mad professor with the whiteboard to the side, doing the numbers and showing how it works. But it's a phenomenal way. It really does work. I've done it.
when you look at a graph, and there are spreadsheets that do this as well, that will show you the proportion of capital repayment and the proportion of interest in these mortgages. In the first few years, you pay off virtually nothing, and so by paying off a bit, it really kind of the whole thing just droops off as the mortgage turns, and you can probably halve the term of your mortgage or more, as you say in your case, because you must have been heavily overpaying that one, which is terrific. Good. All credit here.
It wasn't actually that much, but that little bit makes a difference. And the compounding effect and the timing of the day that you choose, because the lender calculates from the first of the month. And if you set your direct debit as the 3rd, the 5th, the 9th, the 13th, you're paying more interest on that balance before you start to actually catch it up with your payments. But David, we've had a phenomenal session again today. And we've run out of time. So I think we shall say goodbye to our fair friends. So it's goodbye from me today.
And it's goodbye from me in the land where the sun never sets.
Absolutely. All the best, everyone. We shall see you next week.